First, anything released by any government late on a Friday afternoon is only ever done when they're trying to bury the news. And when that release occurs without a government minister to answer questions and a statement is produced, it's almost a form of censorship. But that's exactly what the Albanese government did today in reference to its decision on the Tamil asylum seeker family from Sri Lanka. Interim Minister for Home Affairs, Jim Chalmers, exercised his power under Section 195A of the Migration Act. He said in the statement, "The effect of my intervention enables the family to return to Biloela, where they can reside lawfully in the community on bridging visas while they work towards the resolution of their immigration status." So there is absolutely no resolution to this case, except that the family can now move from Perth back to Biloela. A fat lot of good that is. Now, this was the Prime Minister on radio earlier today, and it sounded distinctly like we were headed for a resolution.
Jim Chalmers, who is the interim Home Affairs Minister, will be making a statement today, and it will be consistent with my view that you can have strong borders without being weak on humanity.
But they've come up with close to nothing. They've shifted their place of abode. Now, let's go back on the facts of the case. This has been the longest running bid for asylum since the cases mounted up after World War II. Let's put the emotion of this case aside for a second, and there's plenty of emotion out there amongst the Australian community. Neither consecutive immigration ministers, the Immigration Department, the Federal Court, the Administrative Appeals Tribunal, and even the High Court stood firmly in the way of the Murugappan family from staying here as legitimate refugees. They are not and never will be legitimate refugees. Claims that their lives will be in danger if they return to Sri Lanka as a result of their father's role in the Tamil Civil War have never been accepted. That war ended, by the way, 13 years ago. And so it's understandable that based on Australia's tough border security laws, the previous government did not want to create a precedent that would result in the people smuggling trade restarting and every refugee advocate under the sun using the Biloela case as a legal avenue for every other asylum seeker to remain in the country. They're the crude facts. But this is why public opinion has still swayed in their favour. The couple arrived here back in 2012 and 2013. They hid from Border Force authorities, married in Australia, moved to rural Queensland, and they also had 2 children. They worked at the local meatworks in Biloela and Nadez and were embraced and loved by those local communities for years. The father was regarded as one of the hardest workers in those meatworks. But that all ended when Border Force raided their home in 2018. Since then, they've been in and out of detention, in and out of court in particular, and have been forced to remain living in Perth under a bridging visa, but under community detention. Now, understandably, the community of Biloela is very excited by today's news.
It means that this little family won't be forced to danger. You know, those little girls are going to get the opportunity to eventually participate in democratic process without fear of persecution or death.
Good for them and good for the family at the centre of this prolonged drama. Jim Chalmers even released a video of his conversation with a Biloela community representative.
I've now spoken to the family and they've gone all through the processes at the Perth end. And I really just wanted to ring you and tell you how much we appreciate the way that you've spoken up for this beautiful family and for the great credit that you've brought to that beautiful Queensland town of Biloela. So I really just wanted to say thank you.
It's almost as if they've been given permanent residency in Australia. They have not. They have not. He would not intervene to that degree. But you'd think that given this family's unique circumstances, entirely unique, the likelihood of this being repeated by failed and unlawful foreign entrants, that first of all got to set foot on in the land, was extremely negligible and would have minimal impact on the flow of former Tamil fighters from Sri Lanka in future. Seriously, talk about half pregnant. The PM has let this family down by not solving the issue, as he promised during the campaign. Why couldn't they create a special permission on the basis of those unique very unique circumstances and accept the risk. He's just kicked it down the road, a long road from Perth to Biloela. The Australian public doesn't want a renewed flow of illegal asylum seekers arriving here again, with all the death and drowning that's attached to that risk. I get that. We all get that. But surely they've long since proven, the family I mean, their suitability to live in Australia in terms of working as long as they have, developing relationships with so many other Australians, being prepared to have family here as well, and as many sponsors as you could find in the two towns where they lived. Again, this family is left in no man's land, having to fight once again in court to stay here permanently. No wonder this was delivered by the new government late on a Friday afternoon with no questions answered, because this decision raises more questions than it answers.